I have seen a lot in my 43 years on the bench. I have watched people lie to my face, cry crocodile tears, and try every trick in the book to escape what they have done. I have seen arrogance in every shape it comes in. I have seen cruelty delivered with a handshake and greed dressed up in a pressed suit. But I have never, in all my decades wearing this robe, had a defendant sit in my courtroom and laugh at a dying woman until the morning of June 11, 2024, at exactly 9:22 a.m., when a man named Dr. Lawrence Keating, Executive Vice President of Commercial Operations at Meridian Pharma, a man who earned $14 million last year, looked at a 51-year-old mother of two who was fighting stage 3 breast cancer and laughed because she could not afford the medication his company manufactured. He laughed. In my courtroom, 12 feet from a woman with a port catheter visible beneath her collar and a scarf covering the hair she had lost to chemotherapy. You think you have heard stories about corporate greed? You have not heard this one. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what I am about to tell you is going to make you furious, then break your heart, and then show you what happens when the wrong man laughs in the wrong room on the wrong day. Let me take you back to how this whole thing started. The case file was flagged by the clerk's office before it even reached my desk. Case number 2024-CV-5571. Fraud, price manipulation, denial of patient assistance benefits, and reckless endangerment. The defendant was Dr. Lawrence Keating, age 57, Executive Vice President at Meridian Pharma, a mid-cap pharmaceutical company headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut, with annual revenues of $2.1 billion. Keating was not a medical doctor. The doctor was a PhD in biochemistry from Yale that he insisted on using as a title because it made him sound like a healer when he was anything but. The complainant was a woman named Diane Kowalski, age 51, registered nurse at Our Lady of Fatima Hospital in North Providence, single mother of 2 boys, and a stage 3 breast cancer patient who had been fighting for her life for 22 months. Now, to understand this case, to feel it the way I felt it sitting behind my bench that morning, you need to know who Diane Kowalski was. She was a nurse. Not the kind of nurse who clocks in and clocks out. The kind of nurse who stays 45 minutes past her shift because a patient is scared and does not want to be alone. She worked the oncology ward. This woman spent her days caring for cancer patients, holding their hands during chemotherapy, adjusting their IV lines, whispering encouragement when they wanted to quit. And then in April of 2022, she was diagnosed with the same disease she had spent her career fighting in other people. Stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, left breast. It progressed to stage 3 by January of 2023. Diane's husband, Michael, had been a Providence firefighter for 11 years, Engine Company 4. He died in the line of duty in 2018 when the roof of a warehouse on Valley Street collapsed during a 3-alarm blaze. He was 36 years old. He left behind Diane and 2 sons, Ryan, who was 12 at the time of the trial, and Connor, who was 9. After Michael's death, Diane held everything together quietly, completely, without asking anyone for permission to fall apart. She picked up extra shifts. She coached Connor's Little League team on Saturday mornings, even when she was so tired she could barely stand. She made $14.80 an hour plus a shift differential for nights. She had a small life insurance payout from Michael's death, $62,000, and she had not touched it. She called it the boys' college fund. When the cancer came, the bills came with it. Surgery, radiation, then chemotherapy. The co-pays, the scans, the days she could not work because the chemo left her too weak to stand for a 12-hour shift. It was crushing her. She had $11,000 left in her checking account. She told me, sitting in my courtroom, that she would die before she spent Michael's money on herself. She said, "That money is for my boys. It is not mine. It was his." If you have ever loved someone so much that you would put their wishes ahead of your own survival, if you know what it means to fight every day not for yourself but for the people counting on you, then please subscribe to this channel. We are a family here, and stories like Diane's are the reason this channel exists. Join us now. When Diane walked into my courtroom that morning, I felt something catch in my chest. She was thin, the kind of thin that illness imposes. She wore a navy blue cardigan over a white blouse, buttoned to the collar where you could see the edge of the port catheter taped against her chest. A silk scarf covered her head, pale blue with small white flowers. Her face was drawn, but her eyes were clear, present. She was exhausted, but she was not defeated. Her sister Margaret sat beside her. Margaret had driven down from Worcester that morning, taken a day off from her job as a dental hygienist, because Diane should not have to do this alone. Diane's hands were in her lap, folded, still. She said, "Your Honor," and "Yes, sir." She never raised her voice. Not once. Not until the very end. Before I go any further, drop a comment and tell me what kind of person laughs at a woman like this. Because I have been doing this for 43 years, and I still do not understand it. Here is what happened. The drug Diane needed was called Veracenol. It was a targeted therapy manufactured exclusively by Meridian Biopharma. Her oncologist, Dr. Priya Anand at Rhode Island Hospital, had prescribed it after the standard chemotherapy protocols showed diminishing returns. Veracenol had shown remarkable results in clinical trials for her specific cancer subtype. It was, in Dr. Anand's words, Diane's best option for long-term survival. The problem was the price. Meridian Biopharma charged $14,800 per month for Veracenol. Per month. Diane's insurance covered 60%. Her out-of-pocket cost was $5,920 every 30 days. She could not afford it. She applied to Meridian's Patient Assistance Program, the program the company advertised on its website with photographs of smiling families and the tagline, "Because every patient deserves hope." She submitted the application, her financial records, her diagnosis, her treatment plan, her pay stubs showing $14.80 an hour. 6 weeks later, she received a form letter. Denied. The letter stated that her household income exceeded the program's eligibility threshold. Diane made roughly $31,000 a year before taxes. The threshold, she later learned, had been quietly raised 4 months earlier, effectively disqualifying anyone who earned more than $24,000 annually. The change had been implemented by Meridian's Commercial Operations Division, the division run by Dr. Lawrence Keating. Diane appealed. She wrote a letter by hand, 2 pages, explaining her situation, her son's, Michael's death, the cancer, the bills. She included a school photograph of Ryan and Connor. She mailed it to Meridian's corporate headquarters. She never received a response. But Diane did not stop. She contacted the Rhode Island Department of Health and her state representative's office. She filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. A patient advocacy attorney named Paul Barreto took her case pro bono. Barreto's investigation uncovered that Meridian Biopharma had raised the eligibility threshold 3 times in 2 years, while simultaneously increasing the price of Veracenol by 41%. He also uncovered internal emails showing that the company's executive team had discussed the threshold changes specifically as a cost reduction strategy. One email, sent by Lawrence Keating to the CFO, dated September 2023, read, "Tighten the PAP criteria. We are giving away too much product. The assistance program exists for optics, not operations." Let me say that again. The executive vice president of a pharmaceutical company wrote in an email that the patient assistance program, the program with the smiling families on the website, the program that cancer patients like Diane relied on to stay alive, existed for optics, not operations, for appearances, not for people. And if you believe that a company's promise to help patients should actually mean something, hit that like button right now. Because what happened next in my courtroom is something that will stay with me until the day I die. Dr. Lawrence Keating arrived at my courtroom 20 minutes late in a black Mercedes AMG S-Class, a vehicle worth north of $180,000. He walked in wearing a slate gray Brioni suit, custom tailored, $6,000. His tie was Hermes, dark blue with gold geometric patterns, $390. His watch was a Patek Philippe Calatrava, white gold, worth at least $45,000. His shoes were Berluti, oxblood leather, polished to a shine you could see your reflection in. He had two attorneys, one from Meridian's corporate legal team and one private defense counsel from a New York firm whose hourly rate was $1,300. They sat down with synchronized efficiency. Keating unbuttoned his jacket, leaned back, and surveyed the courtroom the way a man surveys a restaurant he is not sure is worth his time. Diane was already seated, navy cardigan, pale blue scarf, port catheter beneath her collar, hands folded, back straight. She did not look at him. The prosecution presented the evidence methodically, the emails, the threshold changes, the price increases, the denied application. Dr. Anand submitted a written statement confirming that Verisanol was medically necessary and that the delay in treatment had allowed Diane's cancer to progress. Then Diane testified. She described her diagnosis, the denial letter, writing to the company by hand and including her son's photograph. Her voice was steady, clinical almost, the way a nurse delivers information. She described sitting at her kitchen table after the denial letter arrived, looking at Michael's photograph on the wall, and thinking, for the first time, that she might not see her boys grow up. She paused for 1 second. She took a breath. She continued. The courtroom was completely still. Keating's attorney presented the defense. Scheduling conflicts. Bureaucratic process. Eligibility criteria applied uniformly. Then Keating insisted on addressing the court personally. He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and spoke with the polished confidence of a man who has given boardroom presentations his entire life. Your Honor, he said, Meridian Biopharma serves hundreds of thousands of patients worldwide. Our assistance program has helped over 12,000 patients in the last fiscal year. We cannot accommodate every applicant. There are criteria. There are thresholds. Mrs. Kowalski's application did not meet the requirements. That is not cruelty. That is process. I asked him if he had personally reviewed Diane's application. He said that was not his role. I asked him if he had read her handwritten letter. He said he had not. I asked him if he was aware that the threshold change his division implemented had disqualified an estimated 1,400 patients in Rhode Island alone. He paused. He said, I would have to check those numbers. I said, Dr. Keating, the woman sitting 8 feet to your left has stage 3 breast cancer. She is a nurse. She cares for cancer patients for a living. She lost her husband, a firefighter, in the line of duty. She has 2 sons. She makes $14.80 an hour. And your company denied her the medication that her oncologist says she needs to survive because she makes $7,000 a year more than your program allows. Does any part of that concern you? And that is when it happened. Keating shifted his weight, glanced at Diane, and the corner of his mouth turned upward. Not a full smile, a smirk. And he said, Your Honor, I sympathize with Mrs. Kowalski's situation, but there are thousands of patients in similar circumstances. If we made exceptions for every sad story, we would not have a company. We would have a charity. He said, every sad story. He glanced at Diane Kowalski when he said it. A woman with a chemo port in her chest and a scarf on her head, and 2 boys at home who might lose their mother. And he smirked. The courtroom went dead silent, the kind of silence that is not empty but full of something heavy and dark that settles over a room when everyone in it realizes they have just witnessed something unforgivable. My bailiff, Sergeant Webb, took a half-step forward. Diane closed her eyes. Margaret put her hand on her sister's arm and held on. I felt my jaw tighten so hard my teeth ached. I sat absolutely still. My heart was pounding, but my hands did not shake. I looked at this man in his $6,000 suit with his $45,000 watch and his smirk, and I heard my father's voice, clear as a church bell, saying, The measure of a man is not what he has. It is how he treats people who have nothing. Your support helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. If you have not subscribed yet, please do it now. Because what comes next is the moment that broke this courtroom wide open. And then something happened that nobody expected. My clerk, Dorothy, who has been with me for 17 years, approached the bench and handed me an envelope. It had been delivered to the courthouse that morning by courier. Inside was a letter and a USB drive. The letter was from a woman named Karen Lindgren. She had worked in Meridian Biopharma's patient assistance division for 9 years before being terminated 5 months earlier. The USB drive contained internal company data, spreadsheets, emails, and recorded phone calls, showing that Meridian had systematically denied assistance applications from patients in 7 states, using an algorithm designed to maximize rejections while maintaining the statistical appearance of generosity. The algorithm weighted denial toward patients least likely to pursue legal action, targeting elderly patients, non-English speakers, and individuals without legal representation. Karen Lindgren had been fired for raising concerns internally. She had kept copies of everything. Keating's face drained of color. His attorneys immediately objected. I allowed the evidence to be entered for consideration pending authentication. The assistant district attorney informed the court that she would be forwarding the materials to the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Unit and the Department of Justice. Keating grabbed his attorney's arm. The smirk was gone. The boardroom confidence was gone. He looked like a man watching a building he built start to crack from the foundation up. If you have stuck with me this long, you are incredible. Hit that like button if you believe that the truth always surfaces. Because now it was time. I took a breath. I looked at Diane Kowalski. I looked at the photograph of Ryan and Connor that the prosecution had entered into evidence. 2 boys with their mother's eyes, one in a Little League jersey, the other holding a book. And I delivered my ruling. Dr. Keating, I said, I am ordering Meridian Biopharma to provide Diane Kowalski with a full course of Vericinol at no cost for the duration of her treatment. Not through your assistance program, not through your bureaucratic process, through a direct court order. This woman will receive the medication her doctor says she needs to live, and your company will provide it. I am fining you personally $50,000 for contempt of court, discriminatory denial of care, and conduct unbecoming a human being. Every penny of that fine will go to Diane Kowalski to cover the medical expenses, transportation costs, and lost wages she incurred while your company told her she was not poor enough to deserve help. You will perform 500 hours of community service at Our Lady of Fatima Hospital, on the oncology ward, the same ward where Diane Kowalski spent her career caring for cancer patients. You will assist the nursing staff. You will change linens. You will sit with patients during chemotherapy. You will look into the eyes of people fighting the same disease you laughed at today, and you will understand what your numbers actually mean. I am formally referring this case, along with the evidence provided today, to the State Attorney General, the FBI, and the Department of Justice for criminal investigation into healthcare fraud, systematic denial of patient benefits, and retaliation against a corporate whistleblower. You sat in my courtroom today and called a dying woman's fight for her life a sad story. You smirked at her. I have sat on this bench for 43 years, and I have seen men try to buy justice, bully justice, and outrun justice. None of them succeeded. You turned a patient assistance program into a marketing brochure. And when a mother of 2 sat in front of you with a port in her chest and asked for the medicine that might save her life, you laughed. In my courtroom, a life is not a line on a spreadsheet. In my courtroom, every patient matters. And in my courtroom, nobody laughs at a woman who is fighting to stay alive for her children. The courtroom erupted. People stood. People applauded. People were crying. Margaret was holding Diane, and Diane, for the first time that morning, let herself break. She put her face in her hands and she cried. Not the quiet, composed crying of a nurse holding it together, but the crying of a mother who had just been told she was going to get a chance. I could not help it. There were tears in my eyes, too. I looked at the photograph of those 2 boys and I thought about my own grandchildren. Keating stood at the defense table in silence. His attorneys were packing their briefcases. The smirk was gone. Everything was gone. 8 months later, the Department of Justice opened a formal investigation into Meridian Biopharma's patient assistance practices across all 50 states. Lawrence Keating was placed on administrative leave and subsequently terminated. His professional reputation was destroyed. Karen Lindgren's whistleblower complaint was validated, and she received federal whistleblower protections. A class action lawsuit representing over 2,200 patients was filed in federal court. Meridian's stock price dropped 31% in a single quarter. Diane Kowalski received her Veracinol. She began treatment within 2 weeks of the ruling. Dr. Annan monitored her closely. 4 months later, her scans showed significant tumor reduction. 6 months after that, her oncologist used a word Diane had not allowed herself to hope for: responding. She is still in treatment. She is still fighting. But she is fighting with the medicine she needs, and she is winning. She went back to work on the oncology ward 3 months after the verdict, part-time at first, then full shifts. Her patients gave her a card signed by every person on the floor. Ryan made the middle school honor roll. Connor's Little League team made the playoffs. Diane told me, the one time I spoke with her afterward, that she watches them sleep sometimes and whispers, "We made it, Michael. We made it." I think about Diane Kowalski more than I should probably admit. I think about her sitting in my courtroom with that scarf on her head and that port beneath her collar, and her hands folded like she was sitting in church. And I think about Lawrence Keating smirking at her. And I think about the distance between those two people, not in money, not in power, but in character. It was the widest gap I have ever seen in a courtroom. My father used to tell me, the measure of a man is not what he has, it is how he treats people who have nothing. Diane Kowalski had almost nothing, and gave everything she had to her patients, her sons, and the memory of a husband who died saving strangers. Lawrence Keating had everything, and could not find it in himself to give a dying woman the medicine she needed without laughing about it first. My father would not have needed 43 years on the bench to know who the better person was. He would have known in a heartbeat. To anyone watching who has the power to help someone in need, do not let process become an excuse for cruelty. Behind every application, every form, every case number, there is a human being. See them. And to anyone watching who is fighting right now, fighting an illness, fighting a system, fighting to stay standing for the people who depend on you, remember Diane Kowalski. She was tired. She was sick. She was told no again and again, and she did not stop. She wrote letters. She filed complaints. She showed up in a courtroom and told the truth. And the truth won. It always does. Maybe not on your schedule. Maybe not without pain. But it wins. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you believe in real justice, do 3 things for me. Subscribe to this channel so stories like this reach the people who need to hear them most. Leave a comment and tell me about a nurse, a firefighter, or someone who serves others and never gets the thanks they deserve. And watch the next video, where a billionaire's son mocks a disabled veteran at a traffic stop, and what happens next shocks the entire nation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that justice is not just a word, it is a promise. And I keep my promises.